Hulk Hogan was diagnosed with leukemia as hospital report confirms cause of death. Hulk Hogan's official cause of death revealed. Heart attack and secret leukemia battle. WWE legend tribute. Join us as we dive into the heartbreaking news of WWE legend Hulk Hogan's passing at age 71. The official cause of death, revealed by the Pinellas County Medical Examiner, was an acute myocardial infarction, heart attack, with contributing factors including atrial fibrillation and a previously undisclosed battle with chronic lymphocytic leukemia, CLL. In this video, we explore Hogan's iconic legacy, from Hulkamania to his impact on wrestling, and reflect on the health struggles he faced in his final years. Stay tuned for exclusive insights, tributes from wrestling icons, and details on how Hogan's private cancer battle came to light. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more wrestling news and updates. The wrestling world will never forget the moment the news broke. It was a quiet Florida morning, August 1st, 2025, when a wave of shock and heartbreak spread across the globe. At 8:43 a.m., the Pinellas County Medical Examiner's office released the official report. Hulk Hogan, born Terry Jean Bollea, had passed away in his Clearwater Beach home at the age of 71. The cause: an acute myocardial infarction, commonly known as a heart attack, compounded by complications from a secret battle with chronic lymphocytic leukemia, a cancer Hogan had never publicly disclosed. The news hit like a steel chair to the heart. In the hours that followed, tributes poured in. WWE issued a brief but emotional statement. "We are devastated to announce the passing of WWE Hall of Famer Hulk Hogan. A legend, a trailblazer, and an icon, Hogan's impact on sports entertainment is immeasurable. Our thoughts are with his family, friends, and fans around the world." But even as the accolades echoed from arenas to social media, one question lingered. How could a man so larger than life, so immortal in the eyes of millions, fall in silence without anyone knowing the true fight he was enduring? Behind the red and yellow, behind the flexed biceps and iconic handlebar mustache, there was a man, flesh, bone, and blood. A man who carried the weight of fame and the burden of aging in a business that idolizes strength. For fans, Hogan was forever frozen in time, tearing his shirt apart under roaring lights, pointing to the heavens, and cupping his ear to the crowd. But time, as always, marches forward, and in private, Hogan had begun a slow, painful battle not just with his physical health, but with the truth. Hulk Hogan was diagnosed with chronic lymphocytic leukemia, CLL, in late 2019. The diagnosis was a private blow, kept closely guarded by a small circle of family and medical professionals. According to an anonymous source familiar with his medical history, Hogan opted to keep the condition secret to avoid alarming fans and to preserve his public image as the indestructible real American. In reality, CLL is a form of blood cancer that often progresses slowly but can weaken the immune system, strain the heart, and leave even the strongest men vulnerable. Doctors advised caution. They urged Hogan to slow down, to minimize stress, to prioritize treatment. But Hogan, forever the performer, refused to let his illness define him. He continued to appear at conventions, podcasts, and the occasional WWE event. At WrestleMania 39 in Los Angeles, he made a surprise cameo, his smile bright, his movement slow but intentional. Few noticed the subtle signs: the frequent use of sunglasses indoors, the longer pauses between breaths, the sudden cancellations of appearances citing back pain or dehydration. In hindsight, these were the whispers of a body beginning to falter. According to the official report released this morning, Hogan suffered from atrial fibrillation, a condition characterized by irregular and often rapid heart rate. Combined with his leukemia, the strain on his heart became unbearable. On the night of July 31st, Hogan reportedly complained of shortness of breath and chest pain after attending a quiet dinner at home with his longtime partner Sky Daly. Paramedics were called just after midnight. Hogan was rushed to Morton Plant Hospital in Clearwater, but was pronounced dead on arrival. Medical examiners confirmed the cause: acute myocardial infarction due to underlying cardiovascular disease, with secondary complications from chronic lymphocytic leukemia. The revelation has left the WWE Universe in mourning, not just over the loss of a legend, but over the magnitude of what he kept hidden. Friends, family, and former colleagues have expressed their heartbreak and disbelief. Ric Flair, speaking to a local Tampa News affiliate, broke down mid-interview, wiping away tears as he said, "We talked almost every week, and I never knew. He was in pain and he never showed it. That was Terry. He always carried everyone else's weight, even when he was struggling." For over 4 decades, Hogan was the face of professional wrestling. From the moment Real American blared through the speakers and the red and yellow whirlwind stormed into the ring, he became more than an entertainer. He became a symbol. A symbol of childhood memories, of 1980s pop culture, of patriotism and strength. Hulkamania wasn't just a catchphrase. It was a movement. It was vitamins and prayers. It was belief in something bigger than the show. And now, with his passing, fans are left reeling from the sudden reminder that even icons are mortal, but there was more beneath the surface. According to a family confidant who asked to remain unnamed, Hogan began quietly undergoing chemotherapy in 2020, shortly after his diagnosis. The treatments were intermittent, designed to stabilize his white blood cell count and manage symptoms. He reportedly sought experimental options from private medical institutions in Europe and Mexico, refusing to rely solely on traditional therapies. Hogan, the source said, had grown distrustful of mainstream medicine after decades of surgeries on his knees, hips, and spine, procedures he often claimed left him in worse shape than before. Still, he fought on. He said to me once, "Brother, I took steel chairs to the head. I'll take chemo in the chest." No big deal, the source recalled. But the toll became clearer over time. In public appearances, Hogan appeared increasingly frail, often using canes or braces. His iconic voice, once booming through stadiums, sounded raspier, thinner. At a fan event in early 2024, he appeared visibly winded after just a few minutes on stage, clutching the microphone with both hands and smiling through obvious pain. Many fans assumed it was just age. After all, Hogan was in his 70s, having lived a physically punishing lifestyle. From body slams to back surgeries, his decades in the ring had left scars both visible and hidden. But beneath the surface, his body was also battling a disease that slowly siphoned strength from within. The secrecy surrounding his leukemia diagnosis has stirred debate among fans and pundits. Was it noble restraint, a desire to shield loved ones and fans from sorrow? Or was it the final performance of a man who refused to let the world see him as anything less than invincible? Whatever the answer, the weight of that secret must have been crushing. In a rare podcast appearance earlier this year, Hogan made a cryptic comment that now haunts listeners. "I've made peace with the man upstairs," he said. "If the curtain closes tomorrow, I know I gave everything I had to this business. No regrets, brother." At the time, it was brushed off as Hogan being poetic. But in retrospect, it was a farewell masked as bravado. Within WWE's corporate offices in Stamford, Connecticut, emergency meetings were held following the announcement. Plans are already underway for a multi-part tribute on Raw and SmackDown, with legends like The Undertaker, Stone Cold Steve Austin, John Cena, and Triple H expected to appear in special segments honoring Hogan's legacy. According to internal sources, a statue is being commissioned to be unveiled at the WWE Hall of Fame in Orlando, alongside a permanent exhibit chronicling Hogan's career. Backstage, superstars young and old are said to be grieving deeply. Roman Reigns reportedly requested private time alone in the locker room after learning of Hogan's death. Seth Rollins, who once trained with Hogan at a promotional event in Tampa, posted a single line on X: "Without him, there is no us." And Becky Lynch shared a childhood photo of herself dressed as Hulk Hogan, writing, "Legends never die. Thank you for the dream." And yet, amid all the public tributes, one truth remains: few knew the full extent of what Hogan was going through. Even those closest to him were unaware of the late-night hospital visits, the grueling chemo sessions, the nights when he reportedly collapsed from fatigue in his own living room. He lived with quiet bravery, facing one final heel turn, cancer, with the same grit he brought to WrestleMania 3. There's an eerie stillness in the WWE universe now. A silence where there was once thunderous applause. Hogan's theme music will never echo through an arena again. No more exaggerated poses. No more shirt rips. No more cupped ears. And yet his presence lingers, etched into the very fabric of sports entertainment. For those who grew up watching him body slam giants and defy the odds, the loss feels personal. It's as if a piece of our own childhood faded with that final heartbeat. He was the bridge between generations. The reason so many became fans. The face on the lunchbox, the toy in the Christmas stocking, the poster on the bedroom wall. He was Hulk Hogan, and now he's gone, but legends, as they say, don't die. They live on in memory, in tribute, and in the passion they ignited. Hulk Hogan may have left this world, but Hulkamania forever is immortal. Long before the headlines, long before the medical reports confirmed what the world now knows, Hulk Hogan was already at war. Not in the ring, not with Randy Savage, the Iron Sheik, or Andre the Giant. No, this was a private war, a war he fought behind closed doors, beneath the roar of crowds, where no audience could cheer and no spotlight could reach. This was a war with his own body, and with time itself, chronic lymphocytic leukemia. 3 words Hogan never spoke in public. 3 words that defined his final years. According to one longtime friend, Hogan had been given the diagnosis in the fall of 2019 during a routine blood screening. At first, it seemed like nothing. The doctor told him it was the slow kind, the friend recalled. He even joked about it, said something like, "Brother, even my cancer's afraid of me." But as time went on, it started taking things from him. His energy, his strength, his voice. CLL is often considered a watch-and-wait cancer. It doesn't strike fast like some other forms, but it lingers, silently weakening the immune system, subtly draining vitality. For Hogan, whose very identity was built on power and resilience, the diagnosis was both a medical reality and a spiritual crisis. Here was the man who had defined an era of invincibility now staring down a slow, creeping threat that couldn't be leg-dropped or slammed. In the early days, Hogan remained optimistic. He told those close to him that he was going to beat it the Hulkamania way. He changed his diet, cut back on public appearances, and began what insiders described as a quiet campaign of alternative treatments. But he refused to stop working. He kept doing interviews. He kept attending WWE alumni events. He kept the mask on. To the public, it seemed like Hogan was simply aging. Of course, he walked slower. Of course, his hands trembled when signing autographs. He was in his 70s. This was the cost of a lifetime of elbow drops, chair shots, and countless surgeries. But to those paying close attention, something was wrong. The smile didn't last as long. The energy in his voice would falter. He often declined interviews last minute, blaming travel issues or back flare-ups. Few suspected cancer. Behind the scenes, Hogan's world grew smaller. He confided in only a few people: his partner, Sky, his daughter Brooke, a trusted friend from the wrestling business whose name remains protected. He didn't want sympathy. And more than that, he didn't want to tarnish the brand of Hulk Hogan. He had spent decades building that myth. The strongman, the American hero, the eternal icon. In his eyes, cancer didn't fit into that picture, but his body disagreed. According to medical sources familiar with his case, by early 2024, Hogan's leukemia had progressed significantly. His white blood cell count had spiked, and he was placed on a stronger treatment plan, including targeted chemotherapy drugs. These medications came with side effects: fatigue, nausea, joint pain. Hogan often spent entire days in bed after a treatment session, only to emerge the next morning with a smile, ready to FaceTime fans or record voice clips for wrestling podcasts. It was heartbreaking, said one person close to him. He'd spend hours curled up, too weak to move, but then get on camera and shout, "What you gonna do, brother?" Like everything was fine. It wasn't performance, it was sacrifice. He didn't want his fans to see him suffering. That commitment to the gimmick, to the image, is something many in the industry now wrestle with. Was it heroic? Was it selfless? Or did it prevent Hogan from getting the broader support he needed? WWE insiders admit that even they were unaware of the full extent of his illness. One senior official, who asked not to be named, said they were blindsided by the medical examiner's report. "If we had known, we would have done more," he said. Tribute matches, special appearances, legacy documentaries. He deserved to be celebrated in his final years, not mourned in hindsight. But that was never what Hogan wanted. In his mind, heroes didn't retire. They didn't slow down. They didn't fade away. They kept going. Until the end, and the end came fast. The night of his death, Hogan was said to be in good spirits. He had spent the day watching old wrestling tapes, laughing with Sky, and even recording a short video message for a fan battling childhood leukemia. In the video, which has now gone viral, Hogan flexed and said, "Keep fighting, little man. I know you got this. Hulkamania's running through you." No one could have known that within hours, Hogan himself would be rushed into the ER, his heart finally giving out after years of punishment, both from the ring and from within. The autopsy report revealed extensive cardiovascular scarring, a known side effect of both aging and long-term CLL. Combined with years of physical trauma, surgeries, and perhaps a refusal to truly rest, his body had simply reached its breaking point. It wasn't just the heart attack that took him, it was the accumulation of decades of impact, inside and out. The public reaction has been overwhelming. Social media flooded with tributes. Fans dressed in red and yellow gathered outside WWE headquarters and Hogan's beachside estate. In Times Square, a massive screen displayed a looping highlight reel of his greatest moments: WrestleMania 3, the match with The Rock at WrestleMania X8, the NWO heel turn, and his final Hall of Fame induction speech. One fan held a sign that read, "He beat cancer. It just couldn't beat him fast enough." And yet, amid the celebration of his life, there's also mourning for the private pain he carried. The pressure to remain an icon until the very end, to shield everyone else from the truth, is a burden few can truly comprehend. Those closest to him say Hogan didn't want pity. He wanted joy. He wanted people to remember the roar of the crowd, not the silence of a hospital room. Brooke Hogan released a heartfelt statement on her Instagram. "He wasn't just a legend to the world, he was my dad. And while you knew the hero in red and yellow, I knew the man in pain who still got up every day to make people smile. Thank you for loving him. He loved you right back." WWE has announced a special Celebration of Immortality tribute episode on both Raw and SmackDown this coming week, with appearances by veteran superstars and footage never before seen from Hogan's personal archives. The Hall of Fame wing in Orlando will feature a permanent display of his career, including his early days in the AWA, the rise of Hulkamania, and his role in the NWO Revolution. There are also growing calls for a WWE Foundation scholarship in Hogan's name to support young cancer patients and aspiring wrestlers battling life-threatening illnesses. As one fan wrote on X, "If he could give his final days to making others smile while hiding his own pain, we can turn his death into a legacy of healing." This is not just the passing of a legend. It's the closing of a chapter in professional wrestling's greatest storybook. It's the end of a voice that once boomed through sold-out stadiums, calling on fans to believe in themselves, to rise above hate, and to never give up, even when the odds were stacked against them. It's strange now to imagine a wrestling world without him. No more Hulkamania chants. No more yellow boas. No more thunderous poses in the center of the ring. Just memories, footage, echoes, and the silence of a man who carried the burden of being a symbol for far longer than most could bear. The truth has been revealed. The warrior fell not just to a heart attack, but to a hidden battle with leukemia he chose to fight in silence. Now that battle is over. And in its place, a legacy remains unshaken, immortal, and roaring louder than ever. When the dust settles and the echoes of the final bell fade, What remains of a man like Hulk Hogan? To most fans, he wasn't just a performer. He was a movement. A living, breathing thunderbolt in bandanas and spandex. A figure who transcended the squared circle and became something else entirely, an icon. For over 4 decades, Hogan stood as the bridge between eras. He didn't just exist within the world of wrestling. He shaped it, molded it, marketed it to the world. And now, in the wake of his passing, the question becomes, how did one man change the course of sports entertainment so completely? To answer that, we have to go back. Not to WrestleMania, not to the NWO, but to a young Terry Bollea, growing up in Tampa, Florida. The son of a construction foreman and a homemaker, Terry was a shy, musically gifted kid with dreams of being a rock star. Wrestling wasn't even on his radar until it was. And once it grabbed him, it never let go. In the late 1970s, under the training of Hiro Matsuda, a man infamous for breaking students' bones to test their toughness, Terry found himself reborn. Gone was the shy kid with a bass guitar. In his place stood a towering, mustachioed titan with charisma pouring from every flexed muscle. By the time Vince McMahon Jr. saw him, he saw more than a wrestler. He saw the future. And in 1984, that future arrived. Hogan's win over the Iron Sheik to claim the WWF World Heavyweight Championship wasn't just a title change, it was a revolution. That moment birthed Hulkamania, a phenomenon that would sweep through households like wildfire. With every leg drop, every promo, every rallying cry of "What ya gonna do when Hulkamania runs wild on you?" Hogan cemented himself not just as a wrestler, but as a cultural pillar. He wasn't the most technically gifted in the ring. He didn't need to be. Hogan's true genius was in making fans feel something: hope, pride, unity. He was America's superhero in a time of Cold War tension and 80s excess. He was the embodiment of strength, loyalty, and justice. And more importantly, he made wrestling mainstream. His match against Andre the Giant at WrestleMania 3 drew over 93,000 fans to the Pontiac Silverdome, a record that stood for decades. That iconic body slam, captured in grainy footage and played endlessly in WWE montages, is still one of the most replayed visuals in wrestling history. But even more than the spectacle, Hogan gave fans something else: permission to believe. He made grown men cheer like children and children feel like heroes. But legends are never simple. By the 1990s, the bright lights of Hulkamania began to dim. New stars rose: Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, The Undertaker. Hogan began to feel out of step with the changing landscape. Fans were evolving. The world was changing. And so was he. But instead of fading, Hogan adapted. In 1996, in one of the most shocking moments in wrestling history, Hogan turned heel at WCW's Bash at the Beach, forming the New World Order alongside Kevin Nash and Scott Hall. It was the birth of Hollywood Hogan, the black-bearded villain who tore apart the very legacy he built. And it worked. The NWO became the heartbeat of WCW's dominance during the Monday Night Wars. Hogan had reinvented himself. Again, that reinvention is perhaps Hogan's most underappreciated legacy, not just the man he was, but the man he dared to become. Few wrestlers have survived that long at the top. Fewer still have done so by completely transforming their personas while remaining the gravitational center of an entire industry. And through it all, whether cheered or booed, Hogan remained the standard by which others were measured. Even in retirement, Hogan's influence never waned. He became a pop culture staple, appearing in movies, commercials, reality shows, hosting, commentating, inspiring. He was a walking piece of nostalgia, a living relic of an era that refused to be forgotten, and that's what made his silent battle with cancer all the more heartbreaking. How does a man who defined strength admit weakness? How does someone who was once larger than life confront the very human reality of mortality by not letting it define him? By continuing to live every day in gratitude for the stage he once stood on. By fighting quietly, nobly, endlessly. The WWE Universe may never know the full extent of his suffering. That's by design. Hogan's legacy isn't about hospitals, test results, or chemotherapy schedules. His legacy is in the thousands of kids who wore fake mustaches to school, in the millions of voices chanting his name in unison, in the wrestlers who cite him as their inspiration, in the fathers and sons who bonded over watching him rip his shirt to pieces. Even now, after the shocking confirmation of leukemia as a contributing factor in his passing, fans don't see cancer. They see the Titan on their childhood screens. They hear that unforgettable entrance music. They remember the poses, the flex, the undeniable magic of Hulk Hogan. The outpouring of emotion from the WWE community has become a digital memorial. WWE has added a special banner to its homepage in memory of the immortal Hulk Hogan, 1953 to 2025. Every superstar on the roster, from the veterans to the rookies, has taken to social media to share their grief. Bayley posted a heartfelt video tearfully explaining how watching Hogan with her brother was one of her earliest memories. Cody Rhodes wrote, "He was the blueprint. We all walked in the shadow of Hulkamania." Even Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, now a global megastar in his own right, released a tribute video. There would be no Rock without Hogan. He gave us the platform, the lights, the audience. Everything I ever achieved in this business started with watching him stand tall on that turnbuckle. At WWE headquarters, employees observed a moment of silence at 10 a.m. the morning after his death. In locker rooms across the country, superstars paused, bowed their heads, and let the silence honor the man who once carried the business on his back, and it was heavy. Hogan carried not just the expectations of a company, but the dreams of an entire generation. And even in death, his shoulders bear the weight of a legacy too big for any arena. What happens next? WWE has already confirmed that Hogan will receive a posthumous, immortal ring, a new honor created to recognize once-in-a-lifetime careers that transcend championships and main events. A 10-minute tribute package, narrated by Vince McMahon himself, will air during SummerSlam, followed by a 10-bell salute. The entrance stage will be adorned in red and yellow. A hologram of Hogan will perform his signature pose one final time. Fans around the world are organizing tribute meetups. In Tokyo, a group of hardcore wrestling fans plan to stage a Hogan cosplay flash mob at Shibuya Crossing. In New York, the Empire State Building will light up red and yellow. In London, a candlelight vigil will be held outside the O2 Arena, where Hogan last appeared in the UK. It is proof, if proof were still needed, that Hogan was never just a man. He was a moment, a movement, a myth come to life. But now the ring is quiet, the lights dim, and in that stillness, a world says goodbye, not just to a wrestler, not just to an entertainer, but to a part of our collective memory. Hulk Hogan may be gone, but his voice still echoes in every arena, his story still unfolds in every dream, and his legacy lives in every fan who ever stood in front of a mirror, ripped off a t-shirt, and whispered, "What ya gonna do when Hulkamania runs wild on you?" In Clearwater, Florida, under the swaying palms and the weight of morning skies, the wrestling world gathered to say goodbye, August 6, 2025. A date that will forever echo through the heart of every wrestling fan. That morning, the private funeral service for Terry Gene Bollea, known to millions as Hulk Hogan, was held at the Calvary Catholic Church, just minutes from the beach he loved so much. But this wasn't just a funeral. It was a final chapter. A closing curtain call for the man who spent his life making arenas erupt and hearts soar. It wasn't open to the public. Hogan had requested a private service, simple, sacred, and personal. And yet it was anything but small. The pews were filled with legends. Stone Cold Steve Austin sat next to Ric Flair. Shawn Michaels and Triple H arrived together, their faces hardened by grief. John Cena, wearing a subdued suit and a red and yellow ribbon pinned to his chest, quietly comforted Hogan's daughter, Brooke. At the front of the church, surrounded by white roses and framed photos, sat a mahogany casket draped in the American flag and a custom-made Hulkamania robe. A single spotlight from the stained glass ceiling above lit the fabric, casting a golden glow as if even heaven itself was paying tribute. The service began with silence. Not a whisper. Not a phone buzz. Just breathless stillness. And then the organ played softly, beginning the processional. A choir hummed, Amazing Grace, but many couldn't sing. Their voices cracked, tears trailing down battle-worn cheeks. Grown men who once lifted championship gold now bowed their heads in reverence to the man who lifted an entire industry. The first to speak was Vince McMahon. Standing tall, though older than most had seen him in years, Vince approached the podium with